this episode of The Excursion, we explore the rich history of McIntosh County and the city of Darien, Georgia. This area's protected marshes and estuaries are perfectly blended with a mix of good people, great restaurants, and a general understanding of preserving the past to protect the future of the county. Let's get started. McIntosh County, a stunning and highly protected portion of Georgia, 1/3 of which is actually owned by both state and federal government. Georgia has one of the shortest coastlines in the southeast, but it is home to 1/3 of the salt marshes on the east coast, providing a haven for a wide variety of plant and animal life. And the marshes of McIntosh contribute a huge portion of that statistic. The marshes also protect the coastline from erosion. They form a natural flood barrier that guards against incoming storms, and they provide nurseries for young fish and nesting sites for waterfowl, which is why people flock to this unique region of the eastern seaboard to witness a rarity that was once quite common. Home base for this excursion is located in the heart of downtown Darien. Right along the river and within short walking distance of several top-notch restaurants, cafes, and cute local shops, the Dockside Inn is a cozy, one-of-a-kind getaway equipped with all of the modern amenities you desire, an outside patio for each room along the backside of the inn that overlooks the river and Darien's world-famous seafood restaurant known as Skipper's. The tabby walls of the Dockside Inn perfectly embody the theme of this classic coastal town. Speaking of which, let's meet up with coastal historian Buddy Sullivan, who took some time to share the rich history of McIntosh County and Georgia's second oldest city, Darien.
Darien has had an unusual history economically. There's ups and downs and highs and lows, but probably the biggest low that ever happened to Darien was the burning of the town during the Civil War. And this occurred in June of 1863. Totally undefended town. The town was looted and burned. Hardly anything left, including the waterfront buildings, were totally destroyed, except for a portion of the Strain building. And this was the town's low point. But a lot of people came back and said, well, we can do this again. And this is what I mean by the ups. And it's all predicated on the river. The story of Darien is closely entwined with that of the Altamaha River. The Altamaha is to Darien as, say, the Nile is to Egypt. The town regrouped, built back, built sawmills, and the idea was, let's get into the timber business in a big way. And Darien, soon by the mid-1870s, had reached a new economic high. And so Darien was the leading seaport on the Atlantic East Coast, and it became an international port. But then guess what happened? There was another down. They overcut the forests upriver. So gradually the sawmills closed up. But then soon after that, people had discovered there was a lot of money to be made in seafood. And again, the river came into play. And all of this was based on the local ecosystem. And Darien once again became a very prosperous community, again economically, but this time based on commercial shrimping and oystering.
And then was there another low?
There was another low. Costs skyrocketed. Marine insurance went up. About the same time as the oil embargo caused fuel to go up, you had a gradual infusion of foreign-produced shrimp. And the foreign shrimp gradually undercut the domestic American shrimp market, both on the Gulf Coast and the South Atlantic coast. But Darien has sort of come into a new cycle, and the town has understood that there can be an economy based on ecotourism. Our ecology, our natural environment, the recreational and hunting and fishing opportunities afforded here in McIntosh and Darien, hand in hand with the culture, the local history, it all goes together. And now a lot of people in the community, myself included, are understanding that this could be very well the way to the future for Darien.
What's amazing is that you can visit and envision the grid of the original city plan of Darien. A couple of beautiful original squares have grown back, still boasting those majestic oaks draped with Spanish moss. However, the original buildings were all destroyed in the burning of 1863, except for one, a cotton warehouse located right off the water, barely standing now over 160 years later. The Adam Strain building and its array of stories and relics amazingly still remain. And that building and the history within and all around it are being saved, restored, and, in a sense, reborn.
The Adam Strain building is the single most important historic structure in Darien, largely because it is the only commercial structure that survived the burning of Darien. And Adam Strain came along 10 years or so after the burning and restored the building and turned it into a thriving business. And what's being done to restore this building, to make it a center for culture, for eco-information, historical information, as well as for commercial purposes, is going to be a real boon to this community in the long run. And it's one of the most important rehabilitation projects that I can remember of around here, and I've been here most of my life.
And we were so close to losing it.
And we're so close to losing it, that close to losing it.
We were driving through town, saw it, and became very interested in it, and found out that it had been on the Georgia Trust Places in Peril. And that was probably a couple years before we ended up purchasing it. It took a while to get that done.
Yeah, we had some conversations with the then owner, who was also local. Those conversations were time-consuming. Then the beginning started of the resurrection of the Adam Strain.
Adam Strain will remain mostly what I call clean, I guess, so that everybody can see and enjoy that. We're going to put a nano brewery in the first floor, and the second floor will be a museum of Darien history.
Fred Ecker, I'm project manager with Landmark Preservation. I've been overseeing the Adam Strain project here for roughly 2 years now.
You are not from this area.
No, I live up in New England. My whole career I've traveled, primarily the East Coast, specializing in conserving, restoring museum buildings and plantations.
Your work in Cape Cod and coming here, I can't imagine the stories and history you obtained doing this.
I've worked on some phenomenal buildings through the years,
Yeah.
but this one I've been waiting 27 years now to do. I've been looking at this building, hoping for an owner, so I really came back out of the woodwork to oversee this project. It was built somewhere between 1814 and 1816. Probably took that much time to build it. This building burnt twice. There were a whole 20 some of these warehouses up and down the river here. This is the only one left. I've been told it was the biggest port on the East Coast at the time. And the building next door, which is part of this structure, it was a two-story tabby building also. It was an early bank.
We're now next door.
We're next door into what was the Bank of Darien at its time. It was one of the largest banks, if not the largest bank, in Georgia at the time.
So we've come from the bank where the brewery and kitchen are. We've come through, now we're in the Adam Strain building.
Yeah, we're in what's going to be the main bar and restaurant. And then outside here, we'll open up to a brick terrace with 2 levels of dining and drinking out there also.
It's going to be gorgeous.
Overlooking the river.
Yeah.
It's going to be beautiful. What's interesting about this space is if you look behind us, the windows and doors were all bricked in at one point. They're going to all be opened up again.
So people can't, like that brick wasn't there originally, so people don't need to worry about that coming down.
Right. They'll really see the building as it originally was, and they'll be full of light, which right now it's pretty dark.
So Fred, you're talking about how this was built and how long it takes to do this tabby work, and those holes give kind of a clue of how it was done.
Yeah, so imagine the way we pour concrete now in wooden forms or steel forms. Each one of these holes was the height of one pour. And the little holes were sticks that came through that were pinned that held the form together.
Okay.
So they would pour a level all the way around. It had to cure for a week and a half to 2 weeks. And then they would go to the next pour, the next pour, the next pour. So you can
So you can come back a month later and it's gone that up.
Right, you can do the math. This building took a long time to get built.
All right, so this is not a mural from 1814. It's a little bit later.
Yeah, the artist is relatively well known. He had a studio here. I think it's from the 50s or 60s. I think the 60s is last I heard. And it sort of depicts local cultural. There's a hunter here with some geese or ducks in his hand. There's a photographer up there holding a camera. Little boy jumping out of a tree into the water. So the plan is to conserve all this ultimately.
Well, it's really neat. You got the dockside inn, that's our home base.
Yeah.
But then you got this tabby, and this is very historic as well.
Yeah, these were all the remnants of the lower tier warehouses. Again, there were 2 tiers of them running all the way down across the river there. So the big question was how to keep this wall stable because it was literally collapsing. And we went through a lot of different plans, and what became the simplest plan was to line the yard with 30-yard dumpsters. And then each dumpster has a screw that goes into the ground about 30 feet, holding it to the ground. Welded to the dumpsters are these iron thrusting posts, if you see here, and down at the base there's a port for 15-ton jacks. And so the plan is we'll be pushing the wall and the buttresses back up to a more plumb situation.
Had you done that before?
No, it was a plan we just sort of came up with. We came up with all sorts of ideas, and this was the simplest, and at the time appeared to be the most reasonable.
When we return, we'll dive deeper into the resurgence of the historic Adam Strain and peek at a few treasures that the restoration team discovered within. Breakfast and lunch daily. Dinner on the weekends, offering those comfort cravings you love along with a new take on traditional cuisine. Located in historic downtown Darien, Georgia, the Canopy Restaurant has you covered. Imagine the simple pleasure in finding a perfect sun-washed seashell unveiled by a gently ebbing tide among sugar-white marsh grass. It is this natural beauty and sweet essence of the Georgia coast and its barrier islands that inspires our signature gourmet shortbread and whimsical seashell-shaped confections. As we have learned, along with protecting McIntosh County's environmental treasures, preserving the region's archaeological history has also become quite important to the people who call this place home. And the timely preservation of the historic Adam Strain building is a perfect example of how.
This building was under a demolition permit when we first started, and fortunately the Savics bought the building and saved it.
Ethos has been invaluable. Rebecca Fenwick we have worked with from the very beginning. We contacted her when we first started. The history of it and helping us navigate through what we need to do for the state and federal since it's a national treasure. So yeah, she has helped us navigate through all of that.
Tell me what's happening with this specific building.
Here at the Adam Strain building, Ethos is assisting with the historic tax credit application. So at the state level, there's a 25% tax credit and an 8-year tax freeze. And then at the federal level, a 20% historic tax credit. So combined, that's 45% back on your rehab costs and that 8-year tax freeze. Honestly, it's just been a dream to be involved with such a historic structure. One of the oldest commercial buildings in the state, built of tabby, which the method of construction was patented by a gentleman who was right here in McIntosh County in the years prior to its construction. He came up with that method and it spread all over the coast, this tabby construction. So it's a super unique building and a wonderful project to be involved in, particularly one that was on the brink of demise.
When this building was built to make the tabby, they burnt oyster shell to make quicklime. We're using limestone instead, but it's the same process. So it starts out as calcium oxide, it goes through a chemical process, and eventually it turns right back into its original product.
So after we toured the site itself, we hopped one island over to St. Simon's to explore a few treasures found within these walls that are being cleaned, researched, and preserved with a long-term goal of telling the story of this special part of America.
We had an archaeological dig done, and we found everything from Native American pottery that was 3,000 plus years old to things from the Civil War and things more recent.
Just walked through with Fred. He said you were the person to talk to because they found all kinds of stuff in there, and this is just a sampling of it.
Yes, it is, and we did find tens of thousands of artifacts. If you look here, we'll start by opening up the door to the Adams Strain building. Here is the part that would be on the door, and here's the key. And you just slide it in, turn it, and you can walk on in and see all of the amazing things. And then this one here is an Asbury ware, pre-1850.
And was all of this found in the building or some outside of the building?
A little of it was outside. I tell you, there was stuff everywhere. Now we're jumping back to late Archaic time.
Okay.
So a little over 5,000 years,
All on this one site.
all on this one site. Sites are living. The Native American that made this pot took either the end of a shell or a reed and put the lines on it 5,000 years ago, which is some of the very first pottery.
I think it's going to be wonderful what this building that was almost demolished is going to end up doing for this whole community and all the visitors who are going to learn not just about this building, but what the area meant over the centuries, over the millennia.
And I also think it's really nice that it's going to be a microbrewery so that it brings people together in a fun, casual way and introduces some or reinforces for other what a rich, amazing past all of us in Georgia have.
Welcome to Darien's modern-day general store. Locally made fresh food, drinks, and merchandise, along with a great selection of farm fresh produce. Stop on by Darien's own local exchange. Nestled along the back rivers and marshes of Darien, Georgia, the McIntosh Rod and Gun Club. Immerse yourself in tranquility. Experience the natural beauty of Georgia's coast. Enjoy an award-winning restaurant. Relax. Rejuvenate. Oaks on the River Luxury Boutique Resort. Before we continue our historic journey through the coastal city of Darien, let's take another look into the importance of preserving the environmental treasure that is McIntosh County as a whole, and the effort that is being made to make this happen and continue doing so for years to come. Local resident and County Commissioner Davis Poole proudly calls Darien home and shares why efforts from local, state, and federal levels to preserve this region both historically and environmentally are so important.
The state of Georgia depends on McIntosh County to fulfill the conservation needs of much of the state. The Altamaha River system provides drainage and other benefits as far north as Atlanta and Athens. The only reason this can work is because the river and the delta and the estuaries settle out and filter the sediments flowing south in the river. McIntosh County has over 100,000 acres that's owned by the state and federal governments and most of that land is used for conservation purposes.
Davis's friend and Georgia State Representative Buddy DeLoach is a longtime McIntosh County local and also feels this is an important issue to face when it comes to the future of McIntosh County.
We're proud to be known as Georgia's conservation coast and have embraced the need for land set aside for conservation for the entire state. However, there's a price to be paid for these benefits. The loss of private ownership of these lands limit the potential for development and creates a loss of property tax revenue needed by local government for services. Loss of revenue to the school system hurts those among us that need it most. It's the least among us that pay the highest price. Local and state governments are currently working with the state to create an offset for lost tax revenues, and we're hopeful that increased awareness of McIntosh County's contribution to the entire state will bear fruit.
When we return, it's reward time, shrimp and grit style, with Chef Santiago of the Oaks on the River Boutique Hotel. Breakfast and lunch daily. Dinner on the weekends, offering those comfort cravings you love along with a new take on traditional cuisine. Located in historic downtown Darien, Georgia, the Canopy Restaurant has you covered. So now that we better understand what needs to be done to help preserve the future of McIntosh County, let's journey a few steps from the Marshes to one of the area's newest and most stunning getaways nestled along the scenic riverfront bluff in Darien. Oaks on the River Luxury Boutique Resort offers superb service, spacious accommodations, facilitating unrivaled riverfront access, and meeting me down by the river was the one and only Chef Santiago, who was armed with a stash of fresh Georgia shrimp and stone ground grits for a low country special that's a favorite here at the Oaks Club restaurant.
All right, well, this is exciting, Chef. We have shrimp. We know where the shrimp comes from, but all kinds of other things into this award-winning dish. Tell me about this dish.
So we are doing our classic shrimp and grits that we have here. It is finished with our Creole sauce. We get our shrimp locally from Eckerd's and Anchored Shrimp Company. That their boat is the biggest one usually
It's
out.
the one right there. Oh, that's as fresh as it gets.
So we make our own Cajun seasoning in-house too.
And that's y'all's secret.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm trying to figure it out.
And then we have some green and red bell peppers, a sweet onion, a little bit of garlic, and our Creole sauce that I'm gonna keep a secret too, because
That'll make people come here. They can't do it at home. They gotta come here.
our dishes are always changing, so don't be surprised. Now you have a favorite, and in 2 weeks you come back and there's a new favorite on the menu. That's what me and Chef Chris are pushing for here.
That makes it fun for y'all.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, let's get started here. I'm getting hungry.
A little bit of peppers, a little bit of onions. Get my shrimp, get my seasoning. Get a
The
nice
secret seasoning.
get a nice little coating all over it, making sure it's all nice.
This is just such a classic low country southern dish here.
There's gonna be always like a million iterations on it, but I'm the biggest fan of the Creole style.
Nice.
So you get your little Creole sauce because you got your heat, you got your grits. We do our cheese grits here. We do a smoked cheddar, smoked Gouda. Everyone's a fan of it. We're trying to do something here people can remember. I'm gonna add a little bit of garlic. I didn't want to add it too early, but I'm gonna let that cook a little bit.
Oh, there's the smell. Oh yeah. Now the shrimp won't have to cook long, right?
No, it won't take long. So I'm just gonna let it cook for a little bit and then I'm gonna finish it off with the Creole sauce.
The secret Creole sauce. And when the shrimp is just off that boat.
This is honestly my favorite way of the shrimp and grits, the Creole, the spice. Just a moderate rustic feeling is what we're shooting for here. We do a lot of our stuff in these cast irons because everyone enjoys them.
So what are you putting on it now?
And this is just our microgreens, just a little garnish that we source locally from here. We're trying to get as much stuff locally here and keep everything fresh. And we're looking at local vendors for meats, and we're looking at local vendors for our seafood. And then we just started working with this company that does really cool stuff that we use to finish our plates.
And I think that's why people travel to places like this. They want that local flair.
Yeah.
From the chefs to the food, just to help them understand this area.
I grew up on the coast. I've been here my whole life. I'm enjoying being able to put a little bit of a flair on it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm gonna take this right to that table I was eyeing.
No problem.
Buddy.
You enjoy.
All right. Here we go. Get some of the sauce. Get some of the shrimp. A little bit of that grits in there.
Now that's how you end an historic excursion in style. Eating an amazing meal overlooking the Altamaha River and the marshes of McIntosh County with good people who care about this one-of-a-kind place that they call home. Excursion complete. See you next time.